Pleasure to be on this meeting. Especially we would like to discuss the issue of the longevity, which is a very challengeable, take into account the different issues associated with investment, associated with the effective intervention. I would like to emphasize the word effective. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Maciej Banach. I am professor of preventive cardiology, so I am a scientist and physician in origin. And obviously, I'm also involved in many different businesses and startups, including the ones associated with nutraceuticals, because I am CMO of the Nomi Biotech and Diary Biotechnologies, but I am also involved in the new startups associated with the anti-PCSK9 vaccine, which I hope will be available on the market in the next few years as the first anti-atherosclerotic vaccine, as well as the new imaging methods in order to diagnose atherosclerosis very early. But it is all for me, but I would like to also ask my great colleagues to introduce themselves and say a few words about the companies you are involved.
Thank you, Maciej. So my name is Szöllös. I'm a Senior Director of Business Development at Insilico Medicine. I've been with the company since May 2020. Insilico, if I were to very briefly introduce, is a clinical stage AI-powered drug discovery company. We have 5 assets on the clinic, 1 in phase 2 reading out next year. We also have a proprietary AI platform, which is an end-to-end solution to drug discovery and early preclinical work. We have a system that also predicts clinical trial outcomes. And the connection to longevity is obviously also personal. So for me, also for the CEO of the company, Alex Javronko, who is a very influential person in this field. Obviously, we are also co-organizers of the largest symposium of longevity in Europe called Aging Research Drug Discovery, ARDD, happening every year, end of August in Copenhagen. We do it together with the University of Copenhagen. And yeah, so I mean, you know, as I said, longevity, so officially Insilico is not maybe a longevity company, but we do publish, we do research a lot in this space, and I'm happy to talk to you guys about what we have done in the past and how this will lead eventually, hopefully, to a longer health span and lifespan for the patient.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sergey. I'm one of the managing partners and the co-founders for LongeVC. LongeVC is, in the last 2 years, since we've started a fund, a bit more, 2 years and a few months, has grown into a bit of a household name for early stage longevity investments. As a VC, we're pretty pragmatic, and I'll shed more light on how we actually look at the investment strategy in this space. Yeah, we currently invest from the Fund 1, and we target preclinical stage companies. So we usually come in at the stage where the animal data is already in, and the company is kind of gearing up towards the IND. But we don't only do therapeutic investments, we also do prevention, personalized care, and infrastructural investments, which means that we do look at drug discovery platforms, proteomics, and things like that. So everything that accelerates assets through clinics, preclinics, and clinics into actual adoption of humans. So we currently invest from Fund 1, which is a 20+ million euros vehicle out of EU, and we are gearing up for Fund 2 right now, which is going to be a slightly bigger 150 mil vehicle, investing from US. Most of our portfolio companies are from US, and we currently are at 14 portfolio companies all in all, with 1 year left to deploy capital from Fund 1. That's us in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. You know, the name of the session is Age is Just a Number. For me, as a preventive cardiologist, it's critically important because, you know, when I start to be interested in longevity itself, I'm very much involved in prevention, right, for the last 20 years. So longevity is a little bit challenging, taking into account the understanding itself. Because, you know, if you ask most of my colleagues who are the doctors or scientists, they usually understand longevity as, okay, taking care of the patients at the older age, older adults. So they do not think that we should invest in our health as early as possible. So that is why, for me, it is critically important to emphasize that the definition is longevity is critically important also for the investments, and also take into account the interest and understanding, take into account the number of consumers we may have for different technologies. So longevity, it is invest in our health as early as possible. So I would like to ask start with the general question. What caused, in fact, that you started to be interested in longevity area? Why this area you think is worth to be focused and to start different research and to invest in this area? Sergey, maybe you as the first.
Sure. So I get this question quite a lot. So what got us started in longevity? I can give you a boring answer. I can give you a more sort of emotionally tickling answer. So the boring answer is we've built companies as partners before. So we spent pretty much all of our careers as investors, as founders, depending on who you're talking to, building stuff in age-related diseases, right? So that's kind of the boring answer. The emotionally tickling answer is longevity and age-related diseases is the single thing you should be worried about, right? That's it. What we don't understand is what we don't acknowledge when we wake up in the morning is your mortality. I mean, you don't really think that you're mortal every single day, right? You think about getting kids to school and filling up your car and maybe watching a TV show. You don't really acknowledge that you're mortal. And you kind of take your health for granted. What you also do is you most probably lack education and prevention, right? So where you don't really understand your health as a prevention game, you understand it as a reaction game. So you go to the doctor when something is wrong, not before something is wrong. So really, your body is pretty much okay living 120 years. Well, you don't do it because something very specific takes you out of this world, right? So it can be cancer, it can be a neurodegenerative disease, it can be a cardiovascular disease, So really, longevity in terms of prevention, in terms of, figuring out what to do on the society level with age-related diseases is the only thing you should actually care about. And this is why we're doing it.
Okay. Jan?
So maybe just to continue on Sergey's topic here. So obviously, most of the diseases that are essentially, causing the mortality are age-related. Yeah? So look at the Alzheimer, look at most of the cancers, and So in general, we believe at Insilico, and I think the community that is trying to solve the problem, is that if you cure aging, or if you can slow down, or even if you can reach partial rejuvenation of the tissue or cell, you probably will be able to also solve many of these diseases. So, we believe that basically solving aging is actually the ultimate solution to many human conditions that people are suffering from. So, solving aging is all it matters.
Yeah. You've mentioned during your speak and answering this question about the disease, mortality, patients. But if you look at the area of the longevity, in fact, we should talk about the healthy people, let's say individuals, in order to avoid disease, to prolong the time in order when the disease appear. And for example, when I discuss with the experts from the longevity area, usually, because working as a doctor for the last 25 years, I can see only patients in my probably you are all patients for me, right? The sooner the later. But in the end, we should avoid telling about the patients, because if you would like to be effective in the longevity, you agree with me, we need to start very early in individuals that they do not feel, they do not have any symptoms of any disease, and they would like to invest in health in order to prevent disease in the end. So I would like to ask you whether this definition, whether this understanding of the longevity, it is a kind of opportunity or challenge for you taking into account AI solutions and the other issues that companies involve, and investments take into account the main topic of the Sergey activities. So Jan, how you see it?
Yeah, so that's a very important point, Maciej. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name Peter Attia, but in his recent book Outlive, which I recommend if you would like to dive deep into that sort of concept, he defined the medicine 2.0 concept, which means we are not reacting anymore. We want to be proactive. We want to proactively intervene in the human body in order to avoid, let's say, degeneration or disease even occurring. Yeah? So once you adopt this sort of mind shift, then the question is, what sort of interventions you would like to design at what stage in order to actually do that. Yeah? So I think Peter in his book is very science-driven and obviously talks a lot about that the only proven thing that actually works for longevity extension is actually physical exercise. Yeah? So, and obviously he also advocates for a more protein intake. But he himself is also thinking about a few interventions that could have been done. Obviously, everything starts first of all by early diagnosis. So, I would recommend everyone to run a quick full genome screen just to see whether there are any mutations that could potentially trigger something down the way. And if so, then start thinking about modulating this. Now, how the AI comes to this is obviously, if you have ever seen a readout from a sequencing machine of full genome, that's a lot of data. Yeah? And that's just the beginning. Obviously, you want to also work on transcriptomics, proteomics profile, metabolomics profiles. So that's a lot of data. So if you want to actually even understand what exactly is written in your code, what's written about your genome, yeah? The epigenetics, the methylation data, then you need machines, you need algorithms to help you figure it out. Yeah? So that's one part that we are sort of concerned about. At Insilico, we're applying different algorithms to actually build these gene-disease associations. Yeah? So we want to see whether modulation of a specific protein or a gene, yeah, on a lower level, whether that has any potential impact on sort of signaling pathways and all the way to phenotypic effect in a disease. The other point is, obviously, we know about a few genes that we should be modulating already. So the question is how we are going to do that. Yeah? And then, Insilico is advocating for a healthy lifespan for everyone on the planet, which means you need to make it, the intervention needs to be cheap, needs to be effective, needs to be safe. And that's why we build a generative chemistry system, which generates novel small molecules from scratch. Why small molecules is because they're much cheaper than start investing in, let's say, an antibody or protein, or I'm not even talking gene therapies, which are pretty much out of reach for 99% of the Earth population. So first to understand the disease and the progression and why the things are happening in the body, and then finding something that, or generating or designing, ideally, something that is effective, safe, and could solve the problem.
Additional question, if you allow, Sergey, to ask Jan, because you've mentioned about the whole genome sequencing, right, which is critically important now in order to see the predisposition for the genetic diseases for our individuals. But on the other hand, you probably agree, because I have an occasion to see for the 400 million people data from whole genome sequencing from one of the Far East countries, right, where the government simply paid for it. And despite the fact that they have such database, they do not know how to do it with this data, with this database, take into account what kind of conclusions and advices they should give for the given patients, right? So, do you agree with me that we are at the very beginning in order to well understand the issue of the whole genome sequencing, especially taking into account the next intervention, taking into account the results? And the other issue is, how important is the wording for the individual? Because if there is a predisposition for diabetes, it's only predisposition. If there is a predisposition for Alzheimer's disease, it's only predisposition. It does not mean in 70% of the cases that the diabetes and Alzheimer's disease will appear in this individual.
You're asking me, okay. So obviously, having predisposition is one thing, and then obviously, as you see, it doesn't have to manifest. But we are understanding that having predisposition, so we are actually in a probabilistic game. Yeah? So imagine that you get your 23andMe readout, and there is ApoE E4 mutation, which could, in many cases, lead to early onset Alzheimer. What are you gonna do? You're gonna ignore it, or you're gonna change the way you think about life and maybe make some interventions that could just prevent this from even happening. Again, I'm not advocating for people panicking, because I guess that's what the question that you were asking, because obviously the predisposition doesn't mean it's not 100% guaranteed you're gonna get the disease, but if you just can spend, let's say, 15-20 minutes a day looking after your brain health, that could already help you to sort of delay the onset of Alzheimer by many years. So some interventions could be pretty easy and pretty easy to integrate in a lifestyle. And yesterday we've seen many startups digital health startups that are sort of already doing that, yeah, building apps and sort of making it easier for people to change their lives, quit smoking and many other things. So, you know, I think that intervention doesn't have to be brutal, doesn't have to be invasive. It could be something as easy as doing crosswords for 20 minutes a day or playing chess on your mobile phone for 30 minutes a day, and could already have an impact.
We'll back to it. Sergey, whether the definition of the longevity, let's back to the main question I have asked, is the opportunity or challenge for the investment, that people do not understand longevity, that people think that longevity is associated with the older adults? How you see it as an investor?
You're right. So this question has a multi-layered answer. Right? So the way we don't really define longevity inside the fund, right? So we don't really spend time like thinking about how we define it. But the way I can define it is it's convergence of different tech to prolong human health span, or to prolong healthy human performance. That's what matters. Not the lifespan you don't care about, the health span. So then let's try to kind of untangle the onion a bit, right? So the way we look at longevity tech in general is, let's try and map it in three columns, right? So in the three tiers. Tier number one is happening today, and that is your self-consciousness, right? So this is your trackers, your Apple Watches, you know, things that, you know, give you advices on exercising more, doing 12 sit-ups, drinking water, that sort of thing. So wearables, etc. This is something that you do every day, and this is your kind of contribution into how to improve your lifestyle. So that's happening now. And we're getting better and better at that, and then wearables are getting better and better. Now the tier two is sort of 5 to 10 years from market horizon. And this is where we start looking at age-related diseases, and we're starting to look at therapeutics against age-related diseases, diagnostics, and then infrastructural solutions such as AI for drug discovery, and, you know, all sorts of, you know, new approaches in sequencing, etc. This is where the VCs sit. This is where we look at tech that is disease-focused at the early stage and has a very clear pathway of reaching the market and reaching the patients. And then you have tier number three, right? And this is where you're talking sort of sci-fi stuff, radical rejuvenation, longevity, escape velocity, cryonics, etc. So we're not really there technologically yet. So this is how we segment these things. Now there is a 100% working method of making my eye twitch normally, and that is asking whether we invest in holistic theses of making the individual younger. We don't. No one does. Whoever does just throws money down the drain, right? Because for the VC, we focus on diseases because it gives us the understanding of how the tech and the molecule and whatever that is actually reaches the market. So we do not believe in holistic rejuvenation, at least now in 2023. What we believe is a targeted sort of case-by-case preventative, or sometimes reactive if you fail to prevent, addressing of specific age-related issues, which are these diseases, right? I do not also really agree that we should go prevention only, we should preach only sort of the preventative aspect, because the reality is the disease burden in the population with neuro, with oncology, with cardiovascular is huge anyway. So you should do something about these patients, right, that were already diagnosed. So you should really combine, and what you should do is, instead of, for example, adopting, you know, this very, very stereotypical narrative of let's go personalized medicine now, right? Where personalized, a lot of people start thinking, well, every individual should receive like a very specific cocktail of drugs or a very specific regimen. No. What you should really do as a VC and as a stakeholder in the field is trying to figure out how to squeeze more efficient off-the-shelf treatments in the existing protocols for age-related diseases, right? So that we don't spend more time on patients, we just give them pills that universally work. I mean, if I'm making myself clear here. So this is kind of what we see and how we address the field. We do not, and like I want to emphasize it again, we do not invest in holistic, let's make people younger again theses. They don't make any sense. They're hard to exit for us as a VC. There is nothing to sell. So that's mostly like, you know, hobby science very often for us.
Thank you. So, in fact, you answered many of my questions concerning why it is so difficult to discuss with venture capitals, take into account the investment on venture capitals in some of the longevity areas. I'm a little bit joking, obviously, but on the other hand, you've mentioned that it is much easier for you to have a very concrete horizon of the exit, right? Take into account the intervention which is given, and it is much easier to have such an intervention in the patient already with the disease, because, but on the other hand, you need to understand something, and I would like to discuss with you and with Jan, obviously, that in fact for last several decades, most of the governments invested only in diseases, in established diseases. For example, I give you the example from Poland. In Poland, national health funds in the budget has only 1.7% for the preventive medicine. And that is why we are not effective at all in primary prevention, in the prevention of the disease. But on the other hand, I would like to ask you, okay, I understand your approach, obviously, because if I would be investor, probably I would think in such a way. So do you completely exclude the intervention that might be associated in order to avoid the disease? Because you know it very well that most of the interventions in order to avoid the disease are associated with, let's say, in general, lifestyle changes. And these are the same for the cancer, cardiovascular disease, and chronic disease. So as a venture capital, you are a little bit skeptical, take into account such an intervention?
Oh no, we're very much for taking these interventions, and we're very much for investing in these. What I say is, whenever we look at the technology or the application, we want it to be disease-focused, right? It can be a prevention method, it can be a reaction method, so it can be a drug against already existing condition, it can be a pre-screening methodology, right? I mean, we were one of the first ones to invest in the super early ovarian cancer screening, right? Where it's stage 0.5 essentially, it's not
So we would like simply to have a kind of definition of the individuals that benefit the most from the given intervention, right?
What you need to understand is the existing patient population that you are targeting, or a potential yet-to-be patient population that you're targeting. Only then you can deploy capital in a way that it will actually contribute to the progress of the company, right? Because otherwise, you are investing in science and sort of general, holistic, fundamental research, which is not bad. It's just not something that VCs do.
Yeah,
that's it.
I agree 100%, because I also strongly believe that 70% of all science is for science only, and that is why we do not have so many implementation on the market. Okay, Jan, let's talk about your pipeline, because we've discussed before the session that I was very much involved in silicon experiments as well as in the experiments which are a little bit forward in silico, because it is pharmacore modeling and affinity binding and many other different things. So why you are involved in these kind of experiments? And please tell us a little bit more about your future perspective. What area you would like to cover, whether there are some areas you are focused most, how it looks like in your company?
Yeah, very good question. So first of all, answer the question why, because I guess that's always the most important question. So probably many of you are familiar with the statistics. So it takes on average 12 years, cost about $2.5 billion to actually bring an innovative drug to the market. So the R&D model is not actually working very well. Most of the big pharma companies are not actually discovering any more new drugs. They're normally just in licensing at different stages from academia or small companies. So we have that's essentially reflected to high prices of medicine, which the patient is then facing. So the company was established to actually try to disrupt this model and obviously make drug discovery cheaper, faster, and de-risking it at the same time. So our approach is to understand the biology thoroughly before you actually even start thinking about developing disease. Here we are running many screens using different algorithms that help us to understand the protein's role in a disease, whether it's even worth to modulate. Once we identify that protein, we have a system that is based on generative AI chemistry. So again, generative AI is probably now pretty much on everybody's mind and agenda. But the first paper we published in this space is back from 2016. I sometimes jokingly say, but it's actually true, unfortunately. When we started talking about generative AI in 2016 and 17, people were laughing. Yeah, just, this is never gonna work. Yeah? And then they're not laughing now. Yeah? And obviously we have assets in the clinic using generative AI. But you know, in general, we design a molecule that has from the get-go the properties that we are trying to have from the drug. So instead of looking for a needle in a haystack, we're actually designing the needle. Yeah? So we make it cheap, we make it effective, we make it also de-risking it. Yeah? So there is no unexpected surprises in toxicology studies or phase 1 or phase 2 readouts because we already have done so much work into predicting. So that's the power of Insilico. Yeah? It actually helps you run calculations and predictions and even you create and design new IP without the need to actually run a laboratory, I have to say, very expensive laboratory experiments.
And what are the main challenges? Because, as I mentioned, I was very much involved, and for a few of my experiments I did by myself, I had a little bit negative results because, for example, I was able to say that some of the statins were very much effective in COVID-19 in order to prevent, in order to reduce the risk of the infection. But on the other hand, it wasn't associated with the immediate, let's say, spreading out the information about the statins and using of statins as a prevention of COVID-19. It was the same with one of the molecule we indicated that is a very potent agent against a particle which is associated with atherosclerosis process, PCSK9 protein, which is already used as an anti-cancer drug. But in the end, when we discuss it with the company which is responsible for the production, which is owner of this particle, they were not interested at all in order to extend the properties of this particle into the atherosclerosis area. So what are the challenges? Because you have had enough experience in order to say about it, right?
Yeah, so PCSK I think is used off-label for atherosclerosis, no? At least for preventive. PCSK inhibitors, I guess they're already being used.
Yeah, they are. But you know, they are very much expensive and very...
I know, yeah. But some people take it as an alternative to statins because statins have side effects. But, you know, in general, this is exactly the point. So basically, we are able to figure out, based on, let's say, molecular profiling done on a molecule in different cell cultures or in different environments, and obviously sequencing the data and running this treated versus untreated, case versus control studies, we are able to actually see and find a match for a molecule to actually run a specific or drive a specific process in the body. So this is how, if you would run PCSK against atherosclerosis through our engines, it will actually come up as very influential gene that should be modulated to prevent atherosclerosis. Yeah? So there are different models, Insilico models. We are not claiming we are the best on the market, but you know, obviously we have some concrete results and some validation. Have done. You know, a big pharma company bought one of our assets for 80 million upfront, and obviously milestones and royalties. So that's a validation that we were looking for. But you know, in general, if you have high quality algorithms, if you have good solutions to work with, then you probably will find very interesting insight.
It is a little bit pity we do not have time to talk about the safety of statins because it is something that I am very much involved. But it is not an issue of this panel. Sergey, two critical questions. What about the shortage of the biotech capital, whether it is a problem or not now in 2023, at the beginning of 2024? And if you can tell everyone, what would be I know it is a kind of hypothetical question, what would be the optimal startup that you would like to see and you would like to invest in?
There is no optimal startup, but I'll start with the capital. So it is true. So the capital became more scarce. It's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So when the market was overheating and kind of overinflated, a lot of bad science got funding, right? So a lot of promise got funding, a lot of unsubstantiated claims got funding. So now they were not able to raise follow-on rounds and they're out of the market. That's it. So the self-cleansing, culling type of thing happened. So now, good teams, substantiated science, understandable pipelines and kind of go-to markets, they still raise capital. Like there is no shortage of capital for good teams and promising assets. That's a 100% claim that I can sort of vouch for. The valuations got a bit trimmed down, but again, if you are a VC now with dry powder to invest, it's the best thing, the best time to be alive, right? Because the smart people are still there, and the price tag is a bit less. Now, in terms of what we look in the founders, I mean, we're kind of blessed with the fact that we rarely get random teams, even talking to us, right? So we always get a team that has prior pharma experience or founders that have exited already, know how to work with pharma, know how to work with diagnostics, whatever that is. So strong scientific backgrounds. We rarely get teams where you don't have, everyone is not a PhD in something, right, that is related to what company does. So our core focus is whether the team understands, whether the company understands what the beachhead market, so the beachhead target where they validate the disease or the application is, and how to get there and how much money will it cost. We like platform tech when you have multiple applications and the potential for a pipeline of multiple, let's say, candidates. But we always look for the beachhead one, whether the company understands how to focus. So that's the first one. Team, I kind of expanded on that already. The third, the pain point is IP, always IP. So it's either normally the go-to scenario, it's either licensed exclusively from a major academic institution, so Harvard, Stanford, Yale's of the world, right? Or it belongs to the company, but licensing is kind of more preferred. And then the fourth one is, well, does it actually solve the need? Does it actually address the patient population that we think it should address, right? And this is a metric that we vigorously check with our scientific advisory board, for example. Like, one of our scientific advisory board members is the guy that literally leads all new asset development in Roche, right? So whenever, for example, oncology is concerned, we just ask whether this is something interesting or not. So we try to combine, and then no one excludes the subjective chemistry component of whether we like the team or not.
Okay, so as you can see, it is a very easy process, right? Okay, so thank you very much. We are a little bit out of time. Sergey, Jakimov, Szöllös, great discussion, and thank you very much for such an opportunity. Thank you very much.
And of course, Maciej, Banach, who was hosting the stage for this half an hour. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Maciej will stay with us at the stage, as he will be in the next panel.